Hello everybody! If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 443, The Stillness of Oakhaven, Part 1. Advanced. The removal van groaned its way up the narrow winding lane, finally sputtering to a halt outside the Hollies. David surveyed his new home, a detached stone cottage, nestled deep in the Oakhaven Valley, seemingly untouched by time. Ivy crept romantically over the weathered walls, and the garden, though overgrown, promised hidden beauty. This was it, the escape from London's relentless pace, the chance to finally finish his novel in peace. He'd bought the cottage unseen, relying on idyllic online photos and the estate agent's effusive descriptions of Oakhaven's tranquility. And tranquil it certainly seemed, almost unnervingly so. As the removal men started unloading boxes, David noticed the profound silence. No distant traffic hum, no planes overhead, not even birdsong, just a heavy, expectant stillness. His nearest neighbour, a stern-looking woman named Mrs. Barlow from the cottage opposite, emerged to sweep her already immaculate path. She offered a curt nod, but no smile. "Settling in, are we?" she asked, her voice flat. "Yes, looking forward to it," David replied, trying for warmth. "It's incredibly peaceful here." "Oakhaven likes its peace," she stated. Not as a pleasant observation, but almost as a warning. She retreated back inside without another word. The first few days were a blur of unpacking and exploring. The cottage itself was charming, full of quirky angles and low beams. Yet David couldn't shake a faint sense of unease. He'd find objects slightly moved from where he was sure he'd left them. A book placed spine outwards. A mug shifted on the draining board. He put it down to tiredness and the disorientation of a new place. The village itself was picturesque but strangely subdued. The small shop was well stocked. The pub welcoming enough, yet conversation seemed hushed, glances furtive. People were polite but reserved, watchful. When he mentioned the profound quietness to Mr. Henderson, the shopkeeper, the man simply polished a glass and murmured, "Aye, we like to keep ourselves to ourselves mostly. Less disturbance that way." One evening, trying to work on his novel, David was distracted by a faint, rhythmic tapping sound. It seemed to be coming from within the cottage walls. Rats? He wondered, though it sounded too regular, too deliberate. He searched, pressing his ear to the cold plaster, but couldn't pinpoint the source. Eventually, it stopped as abruptly as it had begun. A week later, walking back from the pub just after dusk, he saw lights on in almost every house, curtains tightly drawn. Yet there was no sound, no televisions, no chatter, just that pervasive, watchful silence. As he neared the Hollies, he noticed Mrs. Barlow standing motionless in her upstairs window, a dark silhouette against the dim light, seemingly staring directly at his cottage. A shiver traced its way down his spine. He hurried inside, locking the door perhaps a little too firmly. He started researching the cottage's history online, hoping to find innocuous explanations. He found little, except for a brief mention of a previous owner, a reclusive artist named Thomas Ashton, who had disappeared suddenly about a year ago. The official record stated he'd moved abroad, but there were no forwarding addresses, no further trace. The tapping sound returned intermittently, always late at night, always subtle enough to make him doubt his own ears. He began to feel observed, even inside his own home. Was it just the isolation playing tricks on his mind, or was Oakhaven's stillness hiding something else? He noticed how villagers would pause their conversations when he approached, how their smiles never quite reached their eyes. One afternoon, clearing ivy from the back wall of the cottage, his hand struck something hard beneath the dense foliage. He pulled the strands away to reveal a small, bricked-up section, no larger than a shoebox, set low near the ground. The brickwork looked newer, clumsier than the surrounding stone. Curiosity overrided caution. David fetched a chisel and hammer from his toolbox. The mortar was relatively soft. As he worked, he felt a prickle of sweat on his brow, a mixture of exertion and apprehension. Behind him, he sensed rather than saw Mrs. Barlow watching from her garden gate. He ignored her. Finally, he loosened a brick and pulled it free. Inside the small cavity was a thick canvas-wrapped package. His heart hammered against his ribs. He pulled it out. It was heavy. Back inside the cottage, hands trembling slightly, he unwrapped the oilcloth. It contained a small leather-bound sketchbook. He opened it. The pages were filled with detailed, unnerving sketches. Not landscapes, but faces. The faces of Oakhaven's residents. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Barlow, others he vaguely recognized. They were drawn with obsessive detail, but their eyes were all wrong, depicted as hollow, vacant, or sometimes filled with a frantic terror. Interspersed with the portraits were sketches of the cottage, details of the walls, the floorboards, and repeated drawings of the small cavity he'd just opened. The final pages contained frantic scrawled notes. They watch, always watching. The silence isn't empty. It listens. Another entry read, tap, tap, tapping, testing the walls, or something inside them. And the last chilling entry, she saw me looking, knows I know, can't leave, they won't let me leave Oakhaven. It was signed T.A. Thomas Ashton. A floorboard creaked upstairs. David froze, sketchbook falling from his numb fingers. He wasn't alone. The tapping hadn't been rats. The silence wasn't peace, it was vigilance. Oakhaven didn't just like its peace, it enforced it, and the previous owner hadn't simply moved abroad. He heard a soft footstep on the landing above. He looked towards the locked front door, then back towards the stairs. The stillness of Oakhaven pressed in, heavy and suffocating, no longer tranquil, but terrifyingly absolute. He was trapped, just like the artist before him. The escape he craved had become a prison. Look out for part 2 of the story tomorrow. Vocabulary notes. Unnervingly, adverb, meaning in a way that makes someone feel worried, uneasy, or slightly frightened. Unsettling, it suggests something is too much or too little, causing discomfort. Example, and tranquil it certainly seemed, almost unnervingly so. Here the extreme quietness, which should be calming, actually causes unease. Similar words, concepts. Disconcertingly, disturbingly, unsettlingly, disquietingly, alarmingly. Effusive, adjective, meaning expressing feelings like gratitude, pleasure, or approval in an unrestrained, enthusiastic, and heartfelt way. It can sometimes imply excessive emotion, perhaps insincerely. Example, relying on idyllic online photos and the estate agent's effusive descriptions of Oakhaven's tranquility. Suggests the estate agent spoke with exaggerated enthusiasm about how peaceful it was. Similar words, concepts. Gushing, enthusiastic, unrestrained, extravagant, demonstrative, lavish in praise. Curt, adjective, meaning rudely brief or abrupt in speech or manner, using few words in a way that seems unfriendly or impolite. Example, she offered a curt nod but no smile. Indicates her nod was short, sharp and unfriendly, lacking warmth. Similar words, concepts: brusque, abrupt, terse, short, blunt, unceremonious, sharp. Pervasive, adjective, meaning existing in or spreading through every part of something, widespread and noticeable throughout, often used for intangible things like smells, moods, or influences. Example, yet there was no sound, no televisions, no chatter, just that pervasive, watchful silence. Means the silence was everywhere, a dominant feature that spread throughout the village. Similar words, concepts: prevalent, penetrating, permeating, ubiquitous, widespread, omnipresent, endemic, if referring to something negative within a specific group area. Furtive, adjective, meaning attempting to avoid notice or attention, typically because of guilt or belief that discovery would lead to trouble. Secretive or stealthy, often used to describe glances or movements. Example, yet conversations seemed hushed, glances furtive, suggests people were looking around secretly or quickly, as if they didn't want to be caught looking or feared being overheard. Similar words, concepts: secretive, stealthy, sly, sneaky, clandestine, surreptitious, covert. Apprehension, noun, meaning a feeling of anxiety or dread that something bad or unpleasant will happen, a sense of foreboding or unease about the future. Example, as he worked he felt a prickle of sweat on his brow, a mixture of exertion and apprehension. David felt worried and uneasy about what he might find in the hidden cavity. Similar words, concepts: anxiety, unease, dread, foreboding, trepidation, misgiving, worry, nervousness. The adjective form is apprehensive. Cavity, noun, meaning an empty space within a solid object, a hole or hollow area, often one that is hidden or enclosed. Example, finally he loosened a brick and pulled it free. Inside the small cavity was a thick canvas-wrapped package. Refers to the man-made hole hidden behind the bricks in the wall. Similar words, concepts: hole, hollow, pocket, recess, void, opening, chamber, if larger. Vigilance, noun, meaning the action or state of keeping careful watch for possible danger or difficulties, being watchful and alert. Example, the silence wasn't peace, it was vigilance. The story concludes that the quietness wasn't natural tranquility, but the result of the community constantly watching, possibly for threats or deviations from their norm. Similar words, concepts: watchfulness, alertness, caution, surveillance, attentiveness, guardedness, observance. The adjective form is vigilant. Story written by Gemini AI. Image created by Grok 3 AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.
Hello, this is Steve. If you enjoyed the story, please would you take the time to leave a meaningful comment and click on the like icon. If you want to know when the next story has been uploaded, please click on the notify bell icon to be notified. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tell your English learning friends so they can benefit too. Thank you.